Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tim Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tim Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Midnight Terrors video for you guys. And this was 5 creepy true cabin horror stories. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag. Okay, here we go.
Every summer in mid-July, my friends and I had a tradition of heading up to my buddy Kevin's family cabin deep in the forests of Minnesota on Million Lake.
Okay.
We had been doing this since childhood, always accompanied by Kevin's dad and sometimes our own. But by the time we were juniors in high school, we finally convinced them to let us go alone. The cabin itself was isolated on a large island in the middle of the lake, with the closest cabin at least a quarter-mile away.
Sounds like a fun place to go to. And also, I get it. The boys are juniors in high school and they think they're grown men. They can handle themselves without any adult supervision. Let's put it that way. Let's just see what happens at this cabin.
Accessible only by a narrow dirt path. To even get there, we had to park on the mainland, load up Kevin's boat, and ride half a mile across the lake. Once we were on that island, we were completely cut off. No roads, no cell service, just the woods, the water, and whatever else was out there. The cabin was small, just one level, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and living room combined, and a bathroom in the back. Every room had at least one uncovered window, meaning that at night, if you were lying in bed, you could see straight out into the trees or the water. Even as a kid, I'd always had this weird, uneasy feeling when trying to sleep there, like someone was watching, but I never saw anything, so I chalked it up to my imagination. By the 3rd night of the trip, we were in full relaxation mode, spending the day fishing, swimming, and just messing around before sitting around the campfire drinking a few beers. At some point, we walked down to the dock to take in the stars. There were no city lights for miles, so the sky looked endless, and the lake was so still it was like glass.
I know that must be an amazing sight to see. Stars filling up the sky and reflecting on the lake. Oh, I would love to go look at that myself.
That's when we heard a splash, just a quick disturbance in the water, like a fish jumping for a bug. We all turned toward the sound, scanning the lake, and Ryan was the first to notice something. He pointed, sounding unsure, and when I followed his gaze, I saw it too. At first, I thought it was a log, but then I noticed long black hair. It looked like a head, just sitting there, completely still, staring straight at us from at least 3/4 of a football field away. The moon was bright enough that I could see the pale skin, but there were no clear features, no eyes, mouth, or nose, just a smooth, ghostly white surface. The second I realized what I was looking at, a wave of fear locked up my entire body. My arms and neck were covered in goosebumps, and I felt sick to my stomach. We told ourselves it was a loon, since they hunt at night and can dive underwater for long stretches, but loons don't stay that still. This thing wasn't moving at all, wasn't bobbing with the current, wasn't rippling the water. It just floated, completely stiff, like it wasn't even real. The longer we stared, the worse it felt, like acknowledging it was somehow inviting it closer. So without another word, we turned our backs and went back to the fire. We tried to shake it off, stoking the flames, drinking more, trying to laugh it away, and for a while, it worked. Then I had to pee. The bathroom inside was taken, so I stepped outside, wandering a little toward the trees near the lake. As I stood there, I let my eyes drift back to the water, and my blood ran cold. It was still there, but it had moved, now at least 30 yards closer, still perfectly still facing me. This time, I could see its nose. My stomach clenched, and an awful, heavy feeling settled over me, like I had made a mistake just by looking at it again. Moving slowly, I backed away and went inside, telling the others it was still there and had gotten closer. We all went out to check, And there it was, same place, same position, but now its chin was tilted up, like it was looking at us from just under the surface. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared go down to the dock. Kevin was the first to say it out loud, trying to make us all believe it was just a log. We knew he didn't believe that, but we pretended to.
I do not know what a loon is, unless that's another word for a crazy person out in the woods. But if it's got pale skin, black hair, and it's just looking at you guys in the water, I wouldn't try to challenge it or call it out because you never know, that thing might get out of the water. Man, they need to get back in the cabin, lock every window and door quick.
Because the alternative was worse. A few hours passed. The night got late, and we all tried to sleep, the heat forcing us to keep the windows open. Tommy and I crashed in the living room while Ryan and Kevin took the bedrooms, but sleep wouldn't come easily. I lay there, forcing my eyes shut, trying not to think about the lake. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing just below the stairs where the fire pit was. The sound was distinct, like boots clicking against the wooden dock, circling, like whoever it was didn't know what to do next. My body was frozen, every muscle tense, my breathing shallow. Then, the sound of 2 slow, creaking steps up the porch stairs. And then, nothing. I wanted to whisper to Tommy, to ask if he heard it too, but I couldn't move, couldn't risk making a noise. After what felt like forever, I started to think maybe I had imagined it. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but before I could convince myself, Ryan's bedroom door swung open. He was pale, his face tight with fear, and the second he saw I was awake, he said, "We need to leave, now." My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to sit up, demanding to know what happened. Ryan's voice was shaky, his hands trembling as he threw his stuff together. He said that when he turned over in bed to get comfortable, he saw something looking in through his window. He only saw one eye, white skin, long black hair draped down over the glass, and the second he saw it, it moved away. The realization hit all of us at the same time. Ryan's window was nearly 7 feet off the ground. For something to be looking in from the top corner, it would have to be incredibly tall, standing on something, or floating. Ryan didn't care about logic anymore. He just kept repeating that we had to leave, and that was enough for us. We grabbed whatever we could, shoving our things into bags without packing properly, and bolted for the door. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, we all froze. Bare footprints, scattered in the dirt, leading around the cabin, toward the trees, toward the lake. Without stopping to think, we ran straight to the boat, tossed our stuff in, and sped off without once looking back at the island. I didn't even think about the thing in the water, didn't check to see if it was still floating there. I kept my eyes locked on the trees, searching for movement, but I saw nothing. The car ride home was dead silent until about 10 miles out, when Ryan, who had been keeping it together up until that point, suddenly broke down, sobbing into his hands, repeating over and over, "What did I see? What the fuck was that?" We called our parents, telling them what happened, telling them we were on our way home, telling them Ryan was freaking out, and they just told us to get back safe. It was nearly 5 in the morning by the time we made it back, and none of us slept. Kevin's dad went up to the cabin that weekend. He didn't experience anything, but he did notice the footprints, which he found odd enough to mention. Whatever Ryan saw in that window shook him badly. For weeks after, he struggled to sleep, eventually needing medication just to get through the night. He got better over time, but even now, he refuses to sleep near a window without curtains. As for me, I've never gone back to that cabin. It makes me sad because I had so many great childhood memories there. But after that night, I just can't do it. Tommy and Kevin have both returned without issue, but Ryan refuses, and honestly, I'm with him. Maybe it was some kind of sick prank. Maybe it was something worse. But what sticks with me the most is that everything, whatever was in the lake, the footsteps, The thing at Ryan's window. It all happened in the same night. And that, to me, is no coincidence.
Okay, my mind is racing trying to think what on earth was out there. Because at first I was thinking, okay, you just see a dead floating body and the murderer's probably around. But nope, this ain't no dead body. This is something demonic, I would say. I don't know what would be living in them woods on that island. And I don't blame your friend either, because if I had an experience like that, I make sure all my windows are covered while I'm sleeping. Hate that he had to have medication to take just to go to sleep. That is just bad. Whatever that thing was really shook him up. So I don't know what this could be. Also, where his window was at was 7 feet off the ground. That thing probably had to step up onto something just to look up that far. It was really that tall. Whew. If I saw that, I'd be like them boys packing up and leaving. Anyway, this case is just disturbing.
I was 11, my older sister Ariel was 14, and my younger sister Belle was 8. We weren't really a vacation family. My dad was a freelance programmer who made good money, but he was drowning in debt, and my mom wasn't exactly the best at managing what little we had. So when my dad finished a big project, we celebrated with a rare treat, a new movie. He picked Final Destination because he loved scaring the hell out of us, and honestly, it worked. We were halfway through when the phone rang, and Dad went to answer it. Next thing we knew, he and Mom were talking in the other room, and by the time they came back, they hit us with, "Hey, we're spending the weekend in a cabin." Apparently, the client Dad had just worked for owned a lakeside cabin in the mountains and offered us a weekend stay for dirt cheap.
Wow. Man, if I was doing that type of job like he described, and the client offered me his cabin to stay, I wouldn't turn that down. I know that'd be one relaxing vacation.
Mom immediately went into packing mode, so we never finished the movie. And after school the next day, we loaded up the van and made the 2.5-hour drive to the mountains. The cabin was actually pretty nice. Just a one-story place with a cool little nook you could climb into, where we found a bunch of old board games. Ariel called dibs on the small bedroom with a twin bed, so Belle and I had to share the last room, which had a queen-sized bed. There was a window on Belle's side, no curtains, just open glass looking out into the dark. A lamp was on my side, and across from us was a closet, but it was locked, and we never figured out what was inside. We played games, ate dinner, and crashed around 11. I must have fallen asleep instantly because the next thing I knew, Belle was gripping my arm, shaking, trying to burrow under me. I was groggy, half awake, trying to understand what was wrong when I caught movement outside the window. Something pale, human-shaped. It was moving away. My brain took way too long to register what I was seeing, but once it clicked, I shot out of bed and yanked Belle with me, hauling ass to our parents' room. They brushed it off, told us we were imagining things, and sent us back to bed. Belle refused to sleep by the window, so we swapped sides, and I told her a story to calm her down. I must have knocked out right after her because I don't remember anything else until morning. The next day was normal. We explored the lake, then spent the rest of the day in town, wandering through little shops while our parents took forever looking at stuff they weren't going to buy.
I agree with she was saying about her parents looking at stuff that they were probably not going to buy. That happens to me with my folks every time we vacation somewhere. We stop at those gift shops. You always find something, but then you put it back down. But let's continue.
By the time we got back to the cabin, the sun was already setting. Ariel cracked a joke as we walked up the porch, but mid-laugh, Dad suddenly stopped walking. He stepped toward the front door, pressed his finger against it, and it swung open. It wasn't latched. None of us really processed what that meant right away. Ariel called out, "Dad?" But he just shook his head and went inside without a word. Mom hesitated, then followed. and the rest of us stood frozen on the porch. A minute later, Dad's voice called from inside, telling us we could come in. When we did, he was standing in the middle of the room, frowning. He locked the door behind us, pulled Mom into the bedroom for a quick chat, and Ariel, clearly picking up on the weird vibe, suggested we play another round of the board game to distract Belle and me. They were gone maybe 5 minutes before coming back. Mom started cleaning up from breakfast, and Dad sat down to play with us. We stayed up for a few hours, but then, out of nowhere, Dad told us we had to go to bed. It was only 9, which pissed Ariel off because she was usually allowed to stay up way later, but he wasn't budging. She stayed back to argue. Belle and I went to bed. I read her a story until she knocked out. Then I passed out too. I woke up to Dad bursting into our room. He didn't say a word, just grabbed Belle, yanked me out of bed, and pulled me into the hall. Mom was doing the same with Ariel, and that's when I noticed Duchess, our dog, sitting stiff by the back door, whining, completely on edge. Dad dragged us straight outside and into the van, tossed our stuff inside, then ran back to get Duchess before peeling out of there like we were being chased. He drove the entire way home without saying a single word. I don't think any of us slept that night. We didn't find out what actually happened until years later. Apparently, Dad had woken up in the middle of the night to what sounded like moaning outside their bedroom window. When he got up to check, he found the front door unlocked. He went to the kitchen and saw that stuff had been moved around, like someone had been inside. Then Duchess started growling at the back door, which was slightly open. He locked everything, grabbed us, and got the hell out of there. The next day, he went back alone to grab our luggage, and that's when he found them. Footprints, several pairs, right outside the window where Belle and I had been sleeping.
So apparently that part of the mountains has got a crazy person out there that's really pale. And he's breaking into that cabin, moving stuff around. Oh, I'm glad you guys got out of there because you never know what that guy would have done and what his motives were. He probably would have broke in and murdered everybody. I don't want to say that.
This happened about 10 years ago when I was around 12 or 13. Summers in my small southern Ontario town were boring as hell, so my dad and I had a tradition. 2 weeks every summer, we'd rent a cabin up north. Our favorite spot was Manitoulin Island, a small touristy place that took a 6-hour drive and a 2-hour ferry ride to reach.
Hey, that sounds like a fun idea. Rent a cabin. I'll do it. If I had the money, of course.
The trip itself was part of the adventure, and on the ferry, we ran into this older guy in a semi-formal suit, handing out homemade maps of the island. It looked like something made in MS Paint, but it had a bunch of tourist spots, so we grabbed one, thanked him, and went on our way. We had an awesome trip, exploring every little fishing shop and tourist stop on the island. But by the last 3 days, we'd seen everything worth seeing. That's when Dad remembered the map. At the very bottom right corner, past everything we'd already visited, there was a long dirt road leading to a picnic area. No signs, no real details, just a dotted line heading straight to the lake. Figuring it might be a hidden gem, we packed up the car and decided to check it out. Now, our ride wasn't exactly built for off-roading. We were in an old '88 Mustang ragtop that had been pushed to its absolute limits this trip. The oil pressure had been dipping due to the heat, but Dad, being a mechanic, wasn't too worried. As we set off, the scenery was beautiful. Open fields, thick forests. But then we started passing through small, run-down towns. In one, we saw a whole group of people covered in red and black war paint, just standing there, watching as we drove past. It was eerie, but we figured it was some kind of cultural event.
I don't think it's no cultural event if you did not see any signs or anything in town advertising something going on. It's probably a trap. I mean, that's my theory. But I don't want to jump into any conclusions, so let's continue.
We kept driving, finally reaching the turn that led to the dirt road. Asphalt turned to gravel, then to straight dirt, the path getting narrower until it barely fit our car. The power lines stopped, meaning whatever was back here had no electricity. Old, rusted logging equipment sat abandoned in the woods. The canopy above got so thick it felt like twilight, even though it was mid-afternoon. We joked about the hills have eyes and wrong turn, but deep down, I think we were both starting to feel uneasy. Then, the trees opened into a clearing, and we saw it. Right beside the road was a massive wooden stake, like something straight out of a Salem witch trial. It had a huge platform halfway up, built from logs, twine, and straw, with a single giant log sticking up from the center. Further ahead was a rundown two-story house, old plantation style, its windows shattered, its front door barely hanging onto one hinge. And there, just past the house, perched right on the edge of a cliff overlooking the lake, was a single wooden picnic table. Before we could even process what we were looking at, a dust cloud kicked up from behind the house. A red pickup truck came flying toward us, pedal to the floor. My dad didn't hesitate. He threw the Mustang into reverse so fast, I nearly lost my lunch. He spun us around, gunned it, but then the car started beeping. The oil pressure had dropped dangerously low. Dad swore, pushing the engine past its limit, the car screaming in protest as we tore down that dirt road like our lives depended on it. And honestly, maybe they did. We hit massive potholes, took turns way too fast, and caught air more than once. But Dad never slowed down. We finally reached the paved road, and when he looked back, no one was following us. Still, he kept the speed up until we hit the first garage we could find. The Mustang nearly stalled as we pulled in. We spent the last 2 days of our trip lying low in the cabin, trying to wrap our heads around what had just happened. When we left the island, we kept an eye out for the man who had given us the map, but he was nowhere to be found. We even asked some locals about the picnic area, but none of them had ever heard of it. In fact, they didn't even recognize the area beyond the last few towns. One guy warned us that the people living way out there weren't exactly friendly to outsiders. I don't know if horror movies have messed with my brain or what, but looking back, it felt like a trap. Maybe it was just some sketchy locals looking to rob travelers. Or maybe it was something worse. If you ever visit Manitoulin Island, don't let this scare you. It's an incredible place with kind and welcoming people. But if you ever come across a well-dressed old man handing out hand-drawn maps, take one, smile, and enjoy the sights. Just never go to the picnic area at the bottom of the island.
Lesson learned. If I ever go to Canada, I make sure not to go to that part because that's kind of creepy that there's a spot on the map that even the locals don't even know what's going on over there. And when they get there, it's a weird wood structure and old plantation house there and one picnic table. Yep, that ain't no picnic area. It was a whole big trap. No wonder why the pickup truck was coming at them full speed. They were probably planning on robbing them that day for sure, but I'm glad the dad did the right decision and gunned it out of there, even though their Mustang started to act up. But yeah, if you see a location on the map and it's not like the other touristy areas, I wouldn't go.
Summer 2020 had us all going stir-crazy. After months of being cooped up thanks to COVID, my friends, Alex, Violet, and I, were desperate for a getaway. We settled on a mountain trip with hiking, camping, and for one night, a stay in a secluded cabin near a fire tower.
Hey, you can't go wrong with a mountain trip, that's for sure. It's secluded and it's got peaceful looking scenery, so I know you always have fun in the mountains.
Violet's parents had rented a fire tower once and raved about it, but all we could find was a cabin beside one. It was cheap, quiet, and isolated, perfect for a night of carefree fun where we wouldn't have to worry about noise complaints. In the days leading up to the trip, we hatched a plan to drop acid at the cabin. Violet was all in, even bringing an entire sheet along for the ride. But as we set off, something gnawed at me. I had this deep, gut-wrenching feeling that we should not trip that night. I told Alex and Violet I wasn't doing it, and they were pissed. We argued, but I refused to budge. Looking back, I'm glad I stood my ground. The drive to the cabin was eerie. 30 minutes from the nearest town, it wound up a mountain on a busted one-lane road with no pull-offs, no campsites, no sign of anyone else. Just us, the trees, and a single cabin at the peak. We got a fire going and settled in. As dusk fell, the hum of an engine broke the silence. Then headlights flashed through the trees. A side-by-side pulled up with 3 kids inside. They waved, climbed the fire tower, then disappeared into the night. That was the only human contact we had. Once inside, we heated up some half-assed hot dogs and sat in the cabin's deafening quiet. The stillness was suffocating. No air conditioners, no traffic, just the wind whispering through the trees.
I'll be wondering what are them teenagers doing at that fire tower. Hope they don't become troublemakers, or unless they're just renting it out like they're renting that cabin out. Oh man, they still need to be on alert because you don't know what these people are up to.
Every little rustle outside made us jump. To shake the tension, I cracked open some wine coolers, tossed a board game onto the table, and tried to lighten the mood. It worked for a while. We got loud, we laughed, we ignored the creeping unease of the forest around us. Later, we'd all admit we heard it. Twigs snapping, the distant hum of an engine. But none of us wanted to be the one to break the illusion of safety, so we pretended not to notice. Until a human hand slapped the window. 3 times. We screamed. Alex grabbed his phone, called 911, and put them on speaker. He tossed me the phone while he and Violet armed themselves with fireplace pokers. Violet started calling her family, saying her goodbyes. I sat there, listening, waiting, praying we wouldn't hear another sound. Whoever was outside had to know we called for help. And now, they were silent. The cops arrived fast for a middle-of-the-night call on a mountain. They brought dogs, combed the area, and found nothing. They suggested it might have been a bear, but even they didn't seem convinced. Why would a bear knock on a window? Why sneak away silently instead of charging toward the half-cooked hot dogs on the table? Then they mentioned something else. On their way up, they'd passed a car, just sitting at the base of the mountain, the only sign of life they'd seen. My blood ran cold, but Alex and Violet were too frazzled to fully process what that meant. Then we saw Violet's car, covered in handprints, smudges where no one had touched, prints that didn't belong to us. We grabbed our things in a frenzy, tossed them into the car, and peeled out of there, following the cops down the mountain as fast as possible. Every pothole, every turn, took us further from that cabin, and I had never been so grateful. We crashed at the first motel we found, a seedy place that smelled like cat piss, but at least it wasn't on that mountain. I lay awake all night, my mind looping over one single thought. There was no one else on that mountain. No other cabins, no campsites, no pull-offs. The only other vehicle belonged to those kids in the side-by-side, and we saw their headlights. Whoever did this had parked further down the road and hiked the rest of the way. They didn't want to be seen. They planned this. I'll never know what they wanted. A cruel prank, a robbery, something worse. Maybe they thought we wouldn't have cell service. Maybe they panicked when Alex called 911. Maybe that single phone call threw a wrench in their plan before things could get really bad. Whatever the case, I have never been more thankful for a gut feeling in my life.
And here I was thinking it was them kids that were renting the fire tower out with the side-by-side. So it ain't them, it was somebody else. A potential robber, probably. Hiding their vehicle down there just so they can do whatever they want in the cabin and then hightail it back to the car and get out of there quick. Or, I mean, he could have been a murderer, but a murderer would not make his presence known by hitting the glass, so I don't know what he was planning on doing.
This happened a couple of years ago when I was living and working at a kids' activity camp, my first time living away from home. The camp had these 2 massive cabins tucked away in the woods. each packed with around 40 staff members, 2 or 3 to a room. It felt like one big community, so nobody really bothered locking their doors. We all knew each other, hung out in each other's rooms all the time, and honestly, it never felt unsafe. Looking back now, that was a huge mistake. So my job at the camp was pretty straightforward, working with the kids during the day and pulling evening shifts at the staff bar, which was mostly for teachers and parents visiting the camp. One night, my roommate Debs and I were both working the bar, but she was on an earlier shift and headed back to our room before me. She had planned to just chill and wait for me so we could watch a movie. About 5 minutes after she left, my phone rang. It was her caller ID. But when I picked up, there was nothing, just silence on the other end. I figured she must have butt-dialed me and didn't think much of it. Then, less than a minute later, I got another call, this time from a friend who lived across the hall. Her voice was tense as she told me, "You need to come back to your room, now." I quickly asked the guy I was working with to cover for me and rushed over. When I got there, about 5 people were standing outside my room, all looking freaked out. I walked in and found Deb standing there, crying. Now this girl was tough as nails, so seeing her like that immediately set off alarm bells. Our room was trashed. Clothes and belongings were scattered everywhere, which was weird because I was a total neat freak and always kept our space tidy. But the worst part? Deb's phone was gone. That's when I remembered the call I got from her number just before I got there. I asked her why she had called me, but she looked at me confused. She hadn't. Someone had stolen her phone and immediately knew to call me. And here's the thing. This wasn't even a nice phone. It was a super cheap, outdated model. There was no reason to take it, unless the person who did wanted to mess with us. Over the next few days, more things started disappearing, but not what you'd expect. Laptops, still there. PlayStations, untouched. Expensive electronics, completely ignored. Instead, someone had stolen my underwear. Some clean, some dirty. The realization made my stomach turn. Someone we lived and worked with, someone we saw every day, had taken only my bras and underwear. To make it worse, I kept getting calls from Deb's missing phone. No one ever spoke, just eerie silence on the other end. We reported everything to the bosses, and they basically blamed us for not locking our door. Okay, fair point. But that didn't change the fact that someone inside the camp was doing this. A few days later, the whole situation got even weirder. I walked into the staff lounge, and there, sitting on the windowsill, was Deb's phone. Just sitting there. No one around, no explanation. I stared at it for maybe 2 seconds before my survival instincts kicked in, and I noped out of there as fast as possible, locking myself in my room until Debs got back. We never found out who did it. We never got answers. But it had to be someone who knew us well. Someone who knew when we'd both be out of the room and had no interest in stealing anything valuable, just creepy personal stuff. To this day, I don't know who trashed our room, stole my underwear, and messed with Deb's phone. But I did learn one thing. Always, always lock your door. Because no matter how well you think you know the people around you, there's always a chance that one of them is a complete creep.
You got that right. You may think that you might know and trust this person, but then they end up turning out to be a perv. Let's put it that way. So it had to be somebody that was working there, like she said, or a perv disguised as a worker. You never know. I mean, that's the only conclusion I could come up with. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Terrors reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. And I say that's a wrapping. Have a nice day, everyone.